Hello, and welcome back to France Made Simple, the podcast where I demystify life in France and debunk some of the many myths that surround living here and tell you everything you need to know about living here and probably a lot of stuff that you don't particularly need or want to know. But, I like talking, so let's get on with it. So today's podcast is slightly different, and the idea for it came to me only this morning. So it might be a bit all over the place structure wise, so bear with me. But I was out for a run, which makes me sound like one of those super cool people that get up and run and meditate and do their yoga before drinking their bucketfuls of green juice in the morning. Far from it. Anyway, I'll get back into that in a minute. Trust me, I am not one of those people at all. But I know that most of my audience are around my age, of a certain age, let's say, and a lot of you are female. I think the very slightly female listeners are in the majority. And I think that a lot of the things that pop into my little head whilst I'm out and about are probably quite relevant to most of my audience. And so I know that some people are probably going to turn around and say, well, what's this got to do with life in France? But I think it's got quite a lot to do with life in France. So without more ado, here goes. Now, I mentioned that I am of a certain age, and let's just say I'm Gen X. And our idea of chilling out and relaxation was going on the sunbed for 20 minutes, going down the pub for a few rum and cokes, having a packet of Marlboro Light or maybe Silk Cut if we were trying to be healthy that week, and then going out clubbing. Now, none of those are probably particularly good for your health, and none of them are probably particularly easy to replicate in rural France, or maybe the rum and cokes and smoking. But let's face it, rum and coke and smoking is probably not the answer to a long and healthy existence. So we need to find alternative methods to make ourselves feel good. And we are a generation that did not grow up doing meditation and breath work. And when people like, what's he called, that guy that does the Diary of a CEO podcast, Stephen Bartlett, go on about having had 2 glasses of Merlot and that like ruined their whole workout routine for the next 3 days, we're all like, honestly, dude, get a life. I mean, for those of us that have grown up, especially women who've had kids, working, dealing with 3 under 5s and the school run, having time to work out if your exercise routine is a bit subpar because 48 hours previously you had a drink is really not on the agenda. We're probably more likely to have had another drink before lunchtime just to get us through the afternoon play dates. Anyway, having said all that, we're all getting to an age where we need to look after ourselves and our health. And I think this is particularly important when we move to France. And for various reasons, I think it can be more difficult to do this than in our previous home environments. Now, there's obviously physical health and mental health. And as those of you that have listened to the podcast for a while know, we've had therapists on, at least one, and I'm planning to get another lady on soon to talk about mental health support here in France. And I think I'm a big believer in therapy anyway. And I think that often when we move to another country, it's very easy to become unmotivated and slide into almost minor depression because things are just so different. And we've also lost in many cases, we've lost our immediate support network of those people that we'd see on a daily basis, chat to, offload to. And yeah, that can all be rebuilt and recreated, but it does take time and it can be very hard and very lonely when you first move to another country. Throw in the language barrier, which is a big factor for many of us, and it can be very difficult not to fall into isolation and depression. So this episode could probably be called Fit in France, and I'm talking about being mentally and physically fit. And again, there are differences between the UK and the US and France in terms of just how things operate. And it's really hard when you first arrive here to to kind of replicate your routine that you previously had and do the things that you need to do to keep yourself happy and healthy. So let's start with exercise and going to the gym. Now, unless you live in an urban area in France, and most of us that move here do move to rural areas, gyms are less common than they are in the UK and the US. And going to the gym until quite recently was really not that common in France. There's been a massive change in the last 5 to 10 years. And there are now nationwide chains of gyms that offer reasonably priced subscriptions, because that is another thing. When you come from a country where gym membership is really cheap and affordable, and then, initially, definitely 5-6 years ago in France, it was pretty exorbitant. There now are chains like Basic Fit and Orange Bleu, which are affordable. So if you have access if you're near enough to a town that has one of those, do check out their membership and pricing. And going to classes can be a bit daunting, but it's a good way to practice your French, and it's a good way to meet people. And you've already got something in common with those people because you're going there to work out together. So give it a try. Don't be intimidated. And I guarantee that if you go to a gym like that, you will end up meeting some people and making some friends, which again helps not only with the physical side of it, but it helps with the mental side of it and the social isolation. So what do you do if you haven't got a gym nearby? Well, your local mairie will have details, and it's easier now because most, if not all of them, have websites. But then again, not everything is going to be listed on the website. So as always, pop in to your local mairie and ask them what's going on in the immediate area. Because very often at the salle de fête, there'll be stuff like stretching, yoga, gentle gym classes. And these are normally really, really cheap, like something, between like 60 and 100 euros for the year. You will need a medical certificate before you do any kind of sport or exercise in France, other than gardening or walking your dog. Even if you want to take part in a sponsored walk, never mind a sponsored run, one of those 5K things, you will need to go to the GP and get a medical certificate, which is something I didn't know about until my son was about to do a riding competition. And I realised he'd already had a medical certificate saying he was able to go riding, but he then needed one to say he was able to take part in a competition, because I hadn't asked the doctor to do that when we went for the first one. I was like, oh my God, really? I mean, to me, coming from the UK, the idea of having to get a medical certificate signed by your GP before you can go out and do a 5K run is just farcical. But, that's the way it is here. So bear in mind that you will need a medical certificate. And that means if you want to join a swimming club, you'll need a different certificate to one that says you are able to do Zumba, for example. Now, I did go and do Zumba with my daughter in a class at the local salle de fête. I thought it would be a good idea because I like music, I like dancing, and actually it was pretty horrific because the sound system was awful, so I couldn't understand a word the woman was saying, and basically I spent the entire kind of term going in the opposite direction to everybody else in the class. My daughter was paralytic with laughter most of the time. But, I did get some exercise. So give it a try, and hopefully you'll have a better experience than I did, or maybe you're just more coordinated. I've always had two left feet. I remember being in a ballet class when I was about 5, and everybody else could do the polka, and I just could not do it. And when I've been to some sort of French family parties, everybody dances, and they all do this dance called le rock, which we don't do in the UK. They think it's a British thing because it's called le rock, but, we don't dance le rock, and I can't dance le rock. And if I get on the dance floor and with a partner and I'm trying to dance le rock, I reduce everybody around me to hysterics because they just cannot believe that this English woman has got not only 2 left feet, but doesn't know what the hell she's doing. So me and dancing, not great, although I do love dancing, but I tend to dance around the sitting room on my own whilst cleaning. That's my compromise. So yeah, gyms, exercise classes, both of those are worth looking into and giving it a whirl. And don't be shy if you do join a gym. Chat to people. You're only going to meet people if you get out there and make an effort. And that's all part of being kind of fit for life in France, is interacting socially. All right. So what was the next one on my list? I did make some notes. As I said, I only thought about all this morning. Swimming. Now, I love water. I love being in water. I think I was probably a gun dog in a previous life. As soon as I even walk into a local swimming pool and smell that kind of whiff of old mackerel and chlorine that seems to permeate French swimming pools, I instantly kind of go, I just love it. I love the sea. I love rivers. I love lakes, anything that's got water in. And I used to swim when I was living in Dax. We had the most fantastic municipal pool. Quite recent. Prior to that, we'd had one of those dome ones that did smell of old mackerel. I was convinced they kept dolphins in there or seals and fed them kippers when it wasn't open to the public because the smell of fish was so bad. But it was nice because it was sort of small and unpretentious and really lovely lifeguards. So I used to go there and take the kids there. And then we got the most fantastic indoor and outdoor all year round swimming pool, which was still is heated by the thermal spring water in Dax. So it was actually warm enough, which I have to confess is not generally the case with French municipal pools. So when you go to one, be prepared to churn up and down and swim. Like, even the spa areas or the bits that have jacuzzis in the more modern pools are not always that warm. So be prepared for it not to be a kind of totally pleasant experience, but you will warm up and you are getting your exercise in. And as we know, swimming is a brilliant form of exercise. Don't forget that you will almost certainly need to wear a bonnet in a municipal pool to stop your hair getting in the filters, which I can kind of see. But then you see some really hairy dude swimming next to you who basically looks like a gorilla. And you think, well, hang on, he's probably got more hair on his back than I've got on my head. But anyway, you will need a swimming hat, almost certainly. And chaps, I'm afraid to say you're going to have to put on a pair of budgie smugglers or Speedos. Now, you can probably these days, almost everywhere, you can get away with kind of boxer short type swimming trunks, but you are not allowed to wear what my father calls his bathers or board shorts. Again, because of hygiene, the argument being that you might have been wearing those all day. Be prepared to have a shower before getting into the pool, and the showers are generally a bit pissy and cold, again, all adding to the not terribly pleasant experience. But it's cheap, it's affordable, almost every town has a pool, so get out there and get swimming. Unless, of course, you hate water, in which case, go running. Now, this is another really cheap, free activity, and if I can get myself out and go running, anybody can. And until about 2-3 months ago, I was running fairly regularly and had got a bit better. And then one thing happened and another thing happened. And then it rained and then I stopped and then I didn't feel motivated. And then I had a bad knee. Anyway, my son was home this week. And when he was about 11 or 12 and started secondary school, they had to go running. And he was absolutely flipping useless. I mean, he could barely put one foot in front of the other. And he was the kind of kid that used to get bullied at school anyway. So I really didn't want him to get picked on for not being able to run as well. So like the good mum that I am, I dragged him out and made him go running with me. He hated it. So we had a lake quite close to the house and it was exactly 1 kilometre around the lake. So I made him come running with me, and the only way I could get him even motivated, and there was still a lot of, oh, mum, was at the time he was obsessed with zombies. So we used to play zombies. And the way you play zombies whilst running with an 11 or 12-year-old is you run slowly and then you say zombies and you have to run fast. And then you say all clear and you can go slower or even walk. And then you say zombies to the left. So you have to run to the right, or zombies to the right. So you have to run to the left, or zombies behind you and you have to run really fast, or zombies straight ahead. So you have to turn around. So I managed to get him round the lake more than once on every occasion. And that worked then. Now the roles have been reversed. He is super fit and takes himself out and does 20K on the cliffs in the dark. I'm not even going to go there about worrying about him falling off a cliff because he is 24. Anyway, so this time he was the one that motivated me. And we were in Decathlon last week. Now, Decathlon's now in the UK, so I'm sure all of you listening from the UK will know about that. If you don't have a Decathlon where you are, because I know I do have listeners from all around the world now, Decathlon is a kind of massive French sports equipment chain store where you can find everything for any sport. The prices are really good, stroke cheap. The basic stuff is all absolutely fine. They do carry some branded sportswear like Adidas and so forth, but there isn't a huge selection of stuff like trainers. So if you want really good running trainers, you're probably going to need to go to a specialist running shop. But if you want basic entry level, walking boots, riding boots, ballet shoes, tennis rackets, you name it, Decathlon will have it. And it's the kind of place I love going to Decathlon because just walking through the door makes me feel all kind of sporty and healthy. Anyway, we popped in there for something or other and the sales were on. And this is another good point about any sports equipment in France. It is expensive, so always look for it in the sales. Anyway, my son found a couple of bits and a running t-shirt for himself and then produced one for me. And I said, I'm not wearing that. It's yellow. I really, really hate the colour yellow. And he just looked at me and he said, Mum, it's merino wool. It's an incredibly good brand. It's a really good price. I'm buying it. You're wearing it. We're going running. I was like, okay, my boy has spoken. Right. So next morning, we went out running and it was really sweet, actually, how the roles have been reversed. And it wasn't me motivating him. It was him motivating me. Now, I already knew that what works for me when I go running is to have earbuds and a really pumping Gen X type playlist. I'm actually going to stick a link to my playlist in the show notes for any of you that are interested, because it's a carefully curated kind of 20 to 40 minute workout list where there's bits where you can go kind of steadily because it's boom, boom, boom. And then bits where it ramps up and you can go, right, sprint, 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 or row, 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 or whatever you're doing. Anyway, but I was with him, so no music, and just him telling me, right, we're going to run to this point, we're going to run to that point. We ran up a hill and he was actually really impressed that I managed to keep chatting whilst running up the hill. And before I knew it, we'd done 5K and run pretty much most of the way, which I was super pleased with because I hadn't run for ages. And obviously we went really, really slowly by his standards, quite slowly by my previous standards, but I did it. And I felt so much better afterwards. And what he did to keep me going was say, okay, well, imagine we're sneaking up on people at this point. So we went sneaky, sneaky, sneaky. And then imagine just, we're dancing, run like you're dancing, which I did as well. And I did that this morning. There were points when, certain tracks came on and I'm like, arms in the air because, okay, luckily nobody saw me. And the dog looked at me like, really? But it kept me going. So, if I can do it, anybody can do it. I'm not a natural runner. I'm not a natural athlete. I don't particularly like doing it. But once I'm out there and I've done it, I feel absolutely brilliant. So that's option number 2. Has a glass of water at this point to recover from talking, which is also, another good activity. Right. So, and if for some reason you can't run, you can walk. So you need to get out there every day for at least an hour, rain or shine. Now, I know that is easier said than done, but if you have a dog, you don't really have the choice. And again, as most of us move to France for a kind of more relaxed rural lifestyle and are not out to work from 9 to 5 and commuting time, maybe if you haven't been able to have a dog before, now is the time when you can get one. So I'm going to be brutally honest here and say, please don't buy dogs. There are too many dogs and cats that need homes. Go to your local shelter, the SPA, which is the Société de Protection des Animaux, funnily enough, like it's the French equivalent of the RSPCA. Or there are different independent associations and shelters and charities, and some English run ones. You can find them pretty easily online, Facebook searches. Go and get yourself a dog is my top tip on that one, because with a dog looking at you every day longingly, you will not be able to resist taking it out for a walk, and that will get you out of the house. And unless you live absolutely in the arse end of beyond and are only surrounded by cows and cabbages, you are bound to meet people. And if you meet them on a regular basis, you'll go from nodding to bonjour to ça va to a conversation to a bit more social interaction. And if you really can't take on a dog because you can't commit in terms of time, or maybe you're traveling back to the UK regularly, or you, for whatever reason, if there's some reason why you can't have a dog, why not volunteer as a dog walker at your local shelter? And again, that's exercise for you. It gets you out of the house and you will get to meet people. So I think, okay, I am a dog lover. I've always had dogs. I couldn't imagine living without a dog, but I know that everybody that's got dogs never regrets it and always says how brilliant it has been for them in terms of their mental health and well-being, as well as their physical health. So the next point here on kind of mental and physical well-being is making time for yourself. And I think this is really, really important. And it's especially important if you're renovating a property, because it's very easy to spend all day and every day working on it. It's, going to take you ages to get finished. And it's all too easy to think, oh, I'll just finish that. I'll just finish that. Oh, we'll carry on tiling the bathroom on Sunday. No, you need to stop. You need to take time out, and you need to go and do stuff that is fun and enjoyable, both for yourself and for your relationship, if you have one. And I am speaking from experience here that one can get way too stuck into doing stuff to the house and not doing enough stuff for each other, with fairly catastrophic results. So take that time out, whether it's just for yourself or whether it's for you and your partner. And again, because when people move here, they often have no support system, or, nothing equivalent to the support system they had at home, whether that's family or friends, especially female friends. So they don't have those kind of girly nights out at Pizza Express, the local wine bar. And, being stuck with your other half all of the time, however much you love them, can get tricky. So get out there and do stuff for yourself, whatever your hobbies or interests are, or even if it's just going and sitting at the bottom of the garden with a book for a couple of hours and stick a face mask on and soak your feet in a nice bowl of hot soapy water, or go out for a nice meal with your other half, sod the money. I think it's very, very easy. We all get stuck into this cycle of thinking, oh yeah, but we can't spend any money because this is going to cost this and that's going to cost that. And that's totally true at the moment. Every time we go to the supermarket, things are ever more expensive. But, you don't even need to go to a restaurant. Go and make yourselves a nice picnic and go and eat it somewhere scenic, away from the house and your renovation project. So make time for yourselves and each other. And as I said at the start, I think therapy and relationship therapy and individual therapy and possibly even couples therapy is very, very important for people who've moved to a new environment and moved to a new country, like so many of us have, because we are kind of stacking the odds against ourselves. We're making our lives a lot harder than they were previously. And that's fine. It makes us all more interesting and resilient and stronger people eventually. But it can be tough as you go through the process. So look after yourself, I suppose, is what I'm saying there. And on the subject of looking after yourself, don't forget to actually look after your physical health as well. Now, France is a country that's very, very big on preventative healthcare. And once you're registered with a GP here, you will find that you're in the system, you will find that you're getting called for regular exams like mammograms, colon cancer testing. This actually comes like a nice little packet, so you can do your poo and post. But yeah, it's great that the system is set up to prevent you from falling ill. The exception to this is for us ladies is arranging gynecological appointments, which is generally down to you to do. Your GP may, if you've got a good one, kind of say, oh, when did you last have a smear? Right, make sure you do it. But you will have to find the gynae and make that appointment for your annual checkup and smear sort of every couple of years. French gynecologists almost deserve an entire episode to themselves, but let's just say it's a cultural experience. I now have a lovely Romanian one who drapes a tea towel over my lady bits and is very gentle and discreet and actually asks for consent at every stage. But don't be surprised when you're asked to strip entirely naked and put your feet in stirrups, which is something which don't do in the UK. And I can see the point of being entirely naked, because that means they check your boobs as well. And if there's anything else untoward, or if you're covered in bruises all over your rib cage, that is another health professional that might actually stop and say, oh, how did you get those bruises? So I can absolutely see the point of it. But the first time I went for a smear and was asked to disrobe completely, I nearly fell off the chair with shock. So be prepared for that one, ladies. Now, mammograms, you will get an automatic recall from the age of 50 onwards here in France. And in Dax, we were really lucky because we had the Centre des Seins, the tit centre, as I used to call it, which was fabulous, really well equipped, brand new, and you could get appointments like that. In other rural areas of France, it's much harder to get mammograms and there is a longer waiting time. So make sure you know where your centres are and you book well ahead, and that you keep on top of that as well. Because it is, as we all know, like those kind of things are just a vital part of preventative healthcare, and they are absolutely necessary. And it's really reassuring living in a country which prioritises all of that. And the same goes for regular blood tests. I don't think I'd ever even had a blood test apart from during pregnancies until I came here. Certainly, nothing like just a blood test because you haven't had one for a couple of years. So let's just check everything. I was like, whoa, but I'm not ill. No, but that's what we do. And again, it's really bloody sensible because it can throw up problems before they become really problematic. So it's totally unlike the UK, where you have to be half dead before you get a blood test and then you don't get given the results. Here, you can go to the doctor, even if he hasn't suggested one, ask for one, pop along to the lab, get the results that evening, unless it's a really complicated test where the results have to be sent off and they might take a whole week. You get your results, you go back to the GP, and you then discuss a strategy, unless everything's absolutely fine, and any treatment that you might need. And again, that's something that Americans aren't used to, because healthcare is so flipping expensive in the USA that unless you've got exceptionally good health cover, you don't go and do that kind of regular stuff. I mean, I hear constant posts from Americans about, not going to the ER unless absolutely essential. And we are like that as well in the UK, with the kind of famous British stiff upper lip. Oh, no, nothing wrong with me. I don't need to go to the doctor. It's just a bit of blood. But I've learned now, after 25 years in France, that go to the doctors, that's what they're here for. They like it when you turn up. They don't want to just get rid of you. They want to sit down and take the time to go through everything with you and make sure you're absolutely fine. And if you're not, they'll do their best to fix you. So, physical health in France, it's a massive, massive bonus for those of us that live here, being part of a healthcare system that is so well structured and so well run. And yeah, it's not perfect, but nowhere is perfect. And I do think that France does a very good job on the healthcare front. So what's the takeaway from this episode, really? I would say that I think the point I wanted to get across was that life in France has challenges, just like anywhere. But moving to a country where you don't speak the language and you may well have a lack of cash, a lack of regular income, a lack of friends, a lack of social life, a lack of routine, because, even going to work every day, even however much you hate it or you hate your boss, it's a routine and it gives you structure. And all of these factors can have a huge effect on your physical and mental health. So you need to meet them head on, and by being as full as I suppose, what's the expression my mum used to use? Vim and vigor. You need to be full of vim and vigor if you want to deal with life in another country. And staying healthy and active is a really vitally important part of that, I think. And I think that being healthy and active and, to the best of your abilities is what makes the difference between success and failure in France. And obviously, I'm not talking about people who are struck down by some horrible illness or disease. Of course, they don't have any option in whether they're healthy or not healthy. They are just lucky they're here and they're going to get good treatment. I'm talking about the rest of us that are sliding gently into a certain age group and probably need to make a bit more effort than we did, say, 10 years ago, to keep on top of it and, stay as healthy and active as possible. So get those tests done, get your exams done, whether it's a pelvic exam, a mammogram, a vaccination, get it all done. Make sure you're as physically healthy as possible. Do as much exercise as possible and get the most out of your life here in France. Well, thank you for listening to that. I hope it wasn't too much of a diatribe, but it was something that I felt needed to be said, and I think it is important. Thank you very much for listening. Please do, if there's one thing I can ask you to do, please do follow the podcast on Spotify or Apple or wherever you get your podcasts. It does make a huge difference to my discoverability, if that is a word. It really does help people find us. So thank you, as always, to our sponsors, Fab French Insurance, who will make your life as simple as Frenchly possible. And obviously, they are your go-to for top-up healthcare cover insurance in France. They will do you an amazing policy, which will cover you for as much or as little as you want to be covered for. I have fairly extensive coverage because I'm quite risk averse, but the prices are still really competitive. And it means I can go to the osteopath, go to the physiotherapist, get non-reimbursable medication, which is not refunded by the state, refunded when I go to the pharmacy or chemist, and not worry about the cost. So if you haven't yet got health insurance cover, or even if you have, it's definitely worth getting in touch with Fab at Fab French Insurance and seeing if they can do you a better deal or get you better cover for the same money. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next time. Bye.